Dr. Jackson is a groundbreaking multidisciplinary artist from New Haven, Connecticut. A singer, scholar, and vocal pedagogue, she excels in both the classical and jazz aesthetics. She earned a Bachelor of Music from the University of Michigan, a Master of Music and Artist Diploma from Yale School of Music, a Professional Studies degree from the Manhattan School of Music, and a Doctor of Musical Arts degree from the University of Connecticut. She brought all of her talents before a worldwide audience in 2011 when she performed on America's Got Talent as the Necessary Diva, the opera-singing bodybuilder. Dr. Jackson is an assistant professor of voice at Hampton University, one of the nation's most prestigious historically Black colleges and universities. We're thrilled to introduce her and welcome her to the Alfred family. Dr. Jackson, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Felicia. I really appreciate that. Hello, everybody. I was looking at the chat and I see that there are people in there from all over the United States, and that is very exciting. So this is Soulful Singing, singing to express, not to blend. Thank you for choosing to be here with me today on April the 30th, 2024. I cannot believe we're already at the end of April. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be here with me. And for that, I am grateful. I desire to begin this presentation with a question. I prefer interactive presentations, so feel free to drop some thoughts in the chat and maybe we'll get around to them eventually. So let me just begin. When you think of the term soulful, what does it imply to you? Is it a feeling or a manner in which to express a feeling? When you think of the term soulful or soul, what comes to your mind? Share that with me, but I'll share some of my thoughts. I think about gut level connection, feelingful, spirit filled. I see somebody here said passion. I love that. Human, I think. Life affirming, unfettered, free, fearless. Love that. Lorianne, I think lots of emotion expressed. Intention, love that from Michelle. In the zone, yes. I also think James Brown. Soul brother number one. Love, love, love that. Let me see what it says here. I'm so tempted to read already. Soulful is an honest expression of feelings. I love that, Ann Smith. Love that. Saul, from the heart. Yes. Wow. Okay. I guess you guys are predicting my presentation. From the heart. Yes. Most of what you're describing are things that are internal, you know, the internal, the sort of inner workings of what's happening inside of us. Feeling, intention, and connection are one with style and manner. Love that, Anita. I'm gonna have to ponder that. Soulful, a powerful connection to the basic life force. Come on, Christina Bradley. I love that. I love that so much. Okay, so yeah, this is going to be fun because y'all get it already. I don't even need to continue this presentation because you kind of get it. I believe soulful expressions most often emanate from life experiences, our stories, and those of others, lived lives, and perhaps having a vivid imagination. Saul also says being able to convey the emotion so the audience connects and feels it. That's it. Sharing, it's like reciprocity. I give, you receive. Yes, I actually have an image. I'm going to share screen here with you. A friend of mine who is a metaphysical guru. I stole this from his page. The soul is comprised of the mind, our thinking, the heart, our feelings, intellect, what we learn, what we absorb, and will, our choices. Yes, the soul, our thinking, our feelings, what we learn and absorb from culture and what's surrounding us and our choices. Just think about that and how that resonates with you as I continue on. Thank you so much for sharing your impressions. When I chose this title originally, it was for a smaller presentation I spearheaded at NCMEA at the conference in 2022. And at the time, I hadn't completely flushed out what soulful implied to me, right? Because it's just a part of me. And I didn't even really have any frameworks for what it would be. But it sounded cool and it resonated with me. Therefore, this exploration of the idea was inevitable, which is generally how I roll, right? I come up with these ideas, I feel it, it resonates, I act on it, and then I have to go back and sort of think about, okay, now we have to codify these ideas. What are the frameworks? There are two articles I read that helped to organize my thoughts. The heterogeneous sound ideals in African American musics. I'm going to stop sharing screen right now for the time being. By Ollie Wilson. The heterogeneous sound ideal in African American music. It appeared in a reader in African American expressive culture, edited by Gina DeGaulle Capone. And she quoted, "For Wilson, aesthetic practices reflect cultural values. And in attention to timbral nuances, he sees a cultural tradition of relatedness and respect for the individual within the group." I should have stayed on share screen, but I'm going to show you the quote so you can ponder a bit. For Wilson, aesthetic practices reflect cultural values and in attention to timbral nuances. He sees a cultural tradition of relatedness and respect for the individual within the group. Individuality within collectivity. We will come back to that because that is one of the central tenets, I believe, of cultivating soulful singing, singing to express, not to blend. There is another source I found in a journal called The Psychology of Music. And the article was called Negotiating Individuality in and Collectivity in Community Music. And here is the quote for that. Actually, here it is here. Moreover, because the bias still leans heavily towards Western academic music in many institutional contexts, the kinds of music making that arise in other cultural environments often tends to be marginalized or framed relative to established Western norms and assumptions. And I'm assuming that most of us have our training in this room in Western norms, right? I'm a classically trained singer. I have 5 degrees in vocal performance, and I can have conversation about the first and the second Viennese schools and all these different practices and performance practices founded in Western norms, right? But I also grew up in the Black church tradition, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on. And that juxtaposition has been something that has informed how I teach, how to balance those two things. Accordingly, it has been argued that emerging collaborative and improvisational pedagogies have a great deal to offer, as they could help in negotiating difference, fostering collaboration, and aid in stimulating trust and shared forms of social understanding. Really profound. Now, what are those characteristics that define who we are as trained Western musicians and educators, right? Great sight singers, right? Our rhythms are perfect. We know a lot about the different, periods in Western culture and Eurocentrism when it comes to Baroque, the classical period, the Romantic period, and post-Romanticism, and so on and so forth. Most of our knowledge is based in those practices, right? But Ollie Wilson writes in another article, Composition from the Perspective of the African American Tradition. I found it in the Black Music Research Journal. The performance traditions of ragtime existed before Scott Joplin and his contemporaries wrote this music down. The fact of notation obviously had an impact on Joplin's compositional thought, right? And he sold lots of sheet music and influenced his concept of music. But his work retained the essential qualities of ragtime tradition that existed before notation. I will pull up that quote as well for you to see. This music did not occur within a cultural vacuum, right? So there is again this juxtaposition between the written matter as opposed to the culture, the performance traditions. And I know with me that was always a conflict for me, to be quite honest. It was always a conflict growing up in the Black church tradition and studying classical music at the age of 11 and 12 years old, learning how to integrate what I learned indigenously into what I was learning on a printed page was always conflicting. I figured it out, but it was a conflict for me. But before I delve into the meat of my presentation, I would like to share a story with you. I am a new author of a musical composition recently published by Alfred Music. And how it came to be is purely by chance and experimentation. When I was a professor at Western Carolina University, I directed a commercial ensemble. And many of the students prior to working with me spent a significant amount of time in traditional choral spaces, adept at sight reading and perfect rhythm making and blending tones. And it was my desire to provide a different learning experience for them, in part due to what I felt was a lack of connection to their bodies, an absence of heart and conviction, or just a gut level relationship to the music. Therefore, I decided to teach them a traditional song orally, a song I learned by ear as a young girl in the Black church tradition, in the Black Pentecostal church tradition. Now, I did not provide them with sheet music. I transcribed a bass line for the pianist. The students pondered, Dr. Jackson, where's the music? I was like, it's in my heart. It's in my chest. It's in my mind. There is no sheet music. I taught a simple riff beginning with the basses. Elijah, Elijah. Then I added the tenors. Elijah, Elijah. Then I layered the altos. Elijah, Elijah. And then the sopranos. Elijah, Elijah. And once a groove was established by this repeated riff, I taught the refrain. Elijah rock, shout, shout. Elijah rock, coming of the Lord. Elijah rock, shout, shout. Elijah rock, coming of the Lord. And then I asked the pianist and co-author of Elijah Rock, my comrade in musical muse, Michael Yannetti, to craft improvised piano interludes. Lastly, can't have a song without verses. Therefore, I taught the verses as I recalled them to be. Now, I learned this at 11 years old, right? Which resulted in a composition. You know, Satan's a liar, a conjurer too. If you don't mind, he'll conjure you. If I could, I surely would stand on the rock where Moses stood. Elijah rock, shout, shout. Elijah rock, coming of the Lord. Elijah rock, shout, shout. Elijah rock, coming of the Lord. And so this piece was born literally by me just feeding the parts to the students. Now, when we were invited to perform at NCMEA at the NCMEA conference, the North Carolina Music Educators Association conference in 2022, we knew Elijah Rock was going to be a big hit, right? It was well received. And when I posted a snippet on my socials, it was noticed by an associate from Alfred Music, who I think is on this webinar, which I'm so excited about, and asked if I was interested in transcribing it and perhaps publishing it. And I was shocked because I didn't set out to create a published work. You know, the intention was just to teach students to sing soulfully, right? And then the rest is history. You know, it was recently published, maybe about a little over a month ago. The mode of teaching was a devised method, sort of an improvisational pedagogy. The outcome was inclusive, collaborative, and extremely expansive, because it did expand my palette and thinking like, now, am I a composer? Am I? My students, you know, were all confused, like, why and how could we possibly learn something that quickly and fall in love with it in a way that they had never experienced before? And certainly not in a learning institution. It was collaborative in that everyone was in the same confused state in the beginning. Where's the music? Dr. Jackson, where is the music? And I kept saying, music is not sheet music. That's not music. The music is in my chest. It's in my soul. And I'm about to feed it to y'all, and y'all gonna do it. And it's gonna be great. Inclusive because the piece was accessible to everyone. You know, it mattered little if you were a sight singing whiz or if you struggled in theory class. Everyone was waiting for their parts to be delivered to them. Expansive because, for the reasons aforementioned, my professional life burgeoned completely after that. And my reach has increased because I believe I defied the norms. You know, change will not always resonate with all, but if the students are feeling the fire, then we ought to like that match. This is the essential purpose of soulful singing, to reinvigorate singers from the inside out. That's really, truly what it is about. The choir director in the Black Pentecostal church experience, as I witnessed, conducted in a very non-traditional way, absent of carefully placed beats and perfected metered patterns with the baton. But alternatively, the entire body projects the energy and the spirit of the music. Like dancing, you know, where your feet is giving small hints of rhythmic thrusts of the song, and sometimes pivoting toward the audience, encouraging a little bit of participation, call and response, right? You can't respond if you don't hear the call. And it was culturally ingrained in me that music making is a soulful experience. It was just there before I learned, you know, it was already ingrained in me that music was something that had to be felt. In the Black church, the emotional outpouring and impact of worship is rooted in field hollers and gospel and the blues and spirituals. The plight and lived experiences of African people, excised from their familiar environments, are inextricably linked to the way music was performed, right? And the uniqueness of indigenous music and folk musics is, in its inherent way, deeply connected to existence, to our cultural sensibilities. Conversely, this one aspect goes underrepresented in traditional Western American musical spaces. And it's not just the music, it's the connection to it that matters. And I will speak about how to break through and construct sort of this connective tissue from our souls to the music. So now, what is soulful singing? Soulful singing, I believe, is employed by an improvisational pedagogy that is wholly based on cultural awareness. And might I add, sort of a metaphysical connection to our first memories of singing. For me, it was church. Holy Ghost fire baptized church. Shouting, stomping, singing. Music making for me was centered in community, ceremony, celebration, spirit, and engaging in gut level sort of intersocial activities. It was a feeling based experience, not primarily cognitive. For someone else, it could be different, but it is essential to self reflect on your early memories of singing to understand your connection to it. It may be that maybe we must heal and rebuild to create better experiences for ourselves and our students. Soulful singing in this context can imply heart, holistic, mysticism, metaphysical approaches to teaching, an approach to help students find their voice, literally and figuratively. In spaces where Eurocentrism and antiquated pedagogies are not always conducive or no longer effective learning practices for singers, I'm currently codifying various aspects of soulful singing approaches in vocal ensembles and writing a book about it, which I'm going to continue to work on this summer. Soulful singing denotes the following ideas: singing by, through, and from one's own connection to their voice. This implies perhaps maybe doing internal work. As caretakers of the voice, we must take care of our own voices. Singing with intention and gut level connection to words, storytelling, our personal stories, cultural perspectives and experiences. I think that is the root of soulful singing. It's this internal connection and having to connect what we're singing, what's coming out of our mouths, to what we can relate to deeply within ourselves. Singing with a presence of mind, mindfulness, awareness, body awareness, alignment, right? Breath, epigastric connection, breath management. And I just want to say as a sidebar, many of my students who are also choral singers are often taught to sing from their diaphragms. And without understanding, physiology or vocal pedagogy, one could think that singing from the diaphragm were the answer. But we don't really sing from our diaphragms, right? Our diaphragm is a muscle of inspiration, darling. So when you breathe in, the diaphragm goes down into the floor, right? So on inhalation, the diaphragm situates itself. It's a muscle of inspiration. I would much rather we tell our students that we sing from our gut, right? We sing from our epigastrium, the upper gastric area, right? Where we sneeze, where the Heimlich maneuver is performed. We don't sing from our diaphragms. Stop telling singers that. And you can't touch it. Mm-mm. You can't touch it, right? We want to use language that students can understand, of course, but then also make sure that it is relatable to the science. I see here what someone put in the chat. Thank you for speaking about singing from the diaphragm. Such a common misconception. Yes, 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 yes. It's so important. If you don't know, please study the muscles of inspiration and the muscles of expiration, right? And antagonism, and how students can learn to breathe effectively in singing. Because one of the biggest problems for singers in general is they don't know how to manage their air because they're not physically connected to the right muscles. So I'll give some ideas, right? On the inhalation, we expand our chest. We relax our abs somewhat. We connect to our epigastrium, and then we slowly contract from our abdominal muscles. Expand the chest. Relax the stomach muscles to a certain degree. Connect to the epigastrium, and then we lift up on that string, that slow inhalation from the abs. So study the singer's muscle and the muscles of inspiration and expiration if it is something that you're not clear about, because too many choral singers are being misguided when it comes to breathing. Soulful singing can be what is reflective of internal untapped energy. Just as music is not conceived in a vacuum, soulful singing is conceptually an internal journey that may lead us to good or even negative memories about our own singing or musical experiences. But I think it's important to go there. A lot of my students don't have the best memories when they think about their singing experiences in choir or in church or in the high school musical. I mean, they're traumatized, and so they lose their confidence in it. So we may sometimes ask our singers, what are some of your youngest singing experiences, right? And how has it affected your vocal identity, right? So how, right? Ensemble directors are managers of voices. I'm going to read that again. Ensemble directors, vocal ensemble directors, are managers of singers. We manage throats. Given the personal nature of the instrument, we are inherently tasked with managing humans, right? Whole humans, not just their vocal folds. It's one part, and not just our desired programs, right? We have to consider the whole human when we're teaching. As managers of voices, this is a question. How can we explore inclusive means of engagement in our singing spaces as managers of voices, right? Maybe you can drop some ideas in the chat. I say the first oath that we make, the same oath that a doctor makes or a personal trainer: do no harm. Oh my goodness, Dorothy Hill. I would show you my iPad. I wrote that down. Yes, I love you, Dorothy Hill, whoever you are. Do no harm, people. Stop hurting these babies' throats. As a voice teacher, I'm often having to mend their voices due to a lack of attention to vocal hygiene in singing groups of all kinds, whether it's gospel or classical or a cappella or musical theater. Y'all got to take that oath, because I have been fixing choral throats for 30 years. And it's not fun. How are singers feeling before, during, and after the singing process? After rehearsal, ask them, how y'all feeling today? During the singing, how did that feel when we did that phrase again? After rehearsal, how do your throats feel? Are you tired? Why are you tired? Why do you think you're tired? Let the students tell you what you might be doing wrong, because they know, but they're never asked. We have to care. And if we don't ask, then we're not practicing do no harm. Choose repertoire based on the voices you have. Woo! Cue the shout music. Choose rep based on the voices you have. Okay? Otherwise, young voices will become worn, and it alters their understanding of themselves and their voices. When they aren't capable of giving you what is being asked, they feel completely insecure and they lack confidence, right? Yes, Samantha, ask. We don't ask our students enough questions, and we should, because they know it's their bodies, right? Do not choose repertoire that you wish to perform. Choose the repertoire based on the voices you have in your ensembles. I'm sorry, that's a big thing with me, because it ruins voices when students are asked to do these big mammoth pieces, or pieces that are too high or too low, and then we're forcing the basses to sing gravelly in the low voice when they don't have those notes. We have to find a happy medium so that we're doing no harm as we are fulfilling our own desires and wishes for our programs. Bigger, warmer, and more plush sounds, especially sopranos. Oh, honey, put them at second soprano. Put them at second soprano or first alto, because I never had an angelic voice, but I am a soprano. So I couldn't blend with Susie Q. I couldn't blend with her. She had a beautiful angelic blendy voice, and I had this big warm sound. I studied my undergraduate studies were at the University of Michigan, and I studied with Jerry Blackstone, Dr. Blackstone. I don't know if you know that name, but he made choir so much fun for us. And he had these big, beautiful gestures. He sang as he conducted, but he would place the larger voiced sopranos at second soprano. And that's when choir became enjoyable for me. And I felt like I belonged there and I was not harmed as a singer. So that's important. And that means you have to learn how to identify voice types correctly. Where are the breaks in a singer's voice? Where is their voice breaking off, right? Because that can determine sometimes where you should put them in your choirs. Okay, that's very important. And then if you have to have a soprano to drop down to second soprano or alto one, please express to them that being soprano one is not more glorious than any other part. And that is not a judgment on them. I don't know where this comes from, right? But please express that to them, right? That it's not more glorious, that you just want them to be comfortable when they're singing. And again, just be sure to learn the basic tenets of the singing process, right? The breathing, generator, phonator, your vocal folds and the functioning of your vocal folds, your primary resonator, right? Your paranasal sinuses, and your articulators. I'm going to share screen now because I want to talk a little bit about resonance. Maybe this will, it's a little blurry, and it's not really the names I'm more concerned about. I just wanted you to see the image. Now, let's talk a little bit about resonance, right? The resonator for singers is the vocal tract, right? Your pharynx, your oral cavity, your nasal cavities. That's our horn, right? Choral directors can explore with singers how to shape their vowels, right? Properly. But one of my biggest challenges when choral directors want to get a blended sound, it's all about dropping the jaw. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Find another way. And I'm gonna share some ideas to see if you can find another way. Because when a singer drops their jaw all the way down here, aha, 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 they can't articulate vowels. They're opening up like with what I call the backwards megaphone, like that. So that means then the back of the throat is not open, right? And as a matter of fact, let me show you another image before I come there so you can see. This is not an open throat, but you can imagine what that would be. This is the soft palate here, right? So when singers open this way, what you see here in the back will remain that way. And what you want is for, I talk to my singers about the backwards megaphone, opening that way, right? So instead of, right? Think about the inhalation as being internal as you lift the soft palate. So it's, so you open the back of the throat instead of having the singers do that. I really want you all to consider in blending voices that when it comes to the ah vowel in particular, and this dropped jaw, that it is damaging to the voice because it is not using the resonator properly. So you have all this space behind the nose. And we want singers to get into that space. And you can create a blended sound, beautifully blended sound, without having the singer dislocate their jaw. Okay, I really wanted to go into that just a little bit so I can keep moving on because I don't want to make this about technique. But I think when it comes to resonance, it's really important for vocal ensemble directors to explore this idea of the resonators and resonance and the vocal tract and the shaping of the vocal tract and finding different ways to create a blended sound aside from dropping the jaw. Okay, good. Let me move on. So the inverted megaphone is what I call it that way. Explore opening the space internally. Raise the roof, do not lower the floor, right? And students will understand that. I use a lot of different sayings to help my students to understand these concepts if they don't understand the science. Raise the roof, do not lower the floor. Another tenet of soulful singing, focus on freedom, not blend. No matter how messy initially, over time, the sound will begin to settle. Creating a unified sound, right? Creating a unified sound will begin to take shape. I think vocal freedom, especially in the beginning of the process, is more important than creating a beautiful sound. It's like, let the singers, let them sing, let the babies sing. Let them just get comfortable with just singing out. So important. and then shape along the way. Preparation. A lot of times I find that ensemble singers sing to the beat. They sing beady. They're singing perfect rhythms and notes, and they think that that makes them a great musician, and it doesn't. Singing perfect rhythms and notes do not a great musician one make. And they need to understand that. We want to cultivate musicians, not machines. So I think it's really important as they are learning to sight sing and all that, to stress the idea of expression in addition to that. Experiment with different, devised methods, sort of experimental pedagogies. Give them a hymn or a folk song and encourage them to sing. Play a groove and allow them to sing whatever comes to mind. I coined a phrase, which I'm writing a book about as well. It's called a mantralese. Mantralese, instead of vocalese, a mantralese. It's the intersection of positive reinforcement with vocaleses to instill positive messaging while vocalizing, technique and soulful singing simultaneously to instill positive messaging while the students are learning. One of the mantraleses that I taught my students, and the phrase I used was mediocrity is whack. So it goes like this. Mediocrity is whack. Mediocrity is whack. Mediocrity is whack. I hope that came through. I hope it didn't get, wonky through the Zoom. But yeah, make up sayings. Yes. Yes, Samantha. Yeah, definitely want to show an example. And I have a lot of them, a lot of them. Make up positive reinforcements and then create a vocalese and add words to it. And singers will have more fun when they're singing their vocaleses and warming up for choir. And continue your own your own journey and self-discovery, and then share those outcomes with students. Teach the human, not the music. Teach the human, not the music. Teach the human, not the music. I coined a little saying, music is an excuse to help my singers become better humans. Like music is the excuse, right? But helping to create good humans is the reason. That's the reason. Okay. Sometimes have conversations about the compositions, the poets, and the significance of the work. Listen to recordings and interpretations of the work with your students. Put the baton away sometimes and sing with your students. Just sing with them. Become a student yourself. Yeah, just just sort of become a co-leader with the students. Let them lead. Individualism within collectivity is something I really want to stress. The best singing groups, in my opinion, are made of soloists. Those capable of expressing themselves individually and boldly and confidently. So I think it's really important to cultivate individualized vocal expression as well within the group. And I think when singers are confident individually, they tend to bring that same confidence into the group setting. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, I have to start wrapping up so that we can have some time for a Q&A. So just really quickly with some closing thoughts. I think the student learning outcomes for this process is students will begin to feel that their way is not wrong, right? But they will grow and evolve. And it really instills the idea that they are enough, that all we're doing as teachers is amplifying what is enough. Students will stop comparing themselves to others, and their voices will benefit, that we share with them. It's not about perfection, but about conviction and intention. I think the lesson gained when I deviated from traditional methods, um, it disassociated me from the usual manner of teaching, and I found a distinction for myself. But most importantly, the students found their voice. And this is how Elijah Rock was born. Without its existence, I would not have a relationship with Alfred music. I wouldn't be here with you today, right? Doing what has always been done and maintaining a certain level of status quo is counterintuitive to nurturing soulful and intentional singing. And my last remarks will be Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. It's been a really wonderful pleasure, this presentation, and I hope that you gained something from it. I have so much to say and I'm so passionate. So I hope you benefited. And now I would love to answer some questions. Thank you, Dorothy Hill. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jada. Jada Todd, my student, is up here. Thank you, Jada.
Dr. Jackson, I do see one question for you so far. This is from Sarah, and she asks, my students sing beautifully, but often don't show this on their faces and body. I'm guessing that soulful singing includes the whole self. Any tips for getting them to feel more of a body connection to the actual music and text?
Yes, what a great question. I was just telling one of my students today who was doing a recital, I'm like, I hear the expression, but I'm not seeing the expression. I think a lot of times students tend to be more stiff when they don't identify with what they're singing. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, we can shape beautiful sounds and create the most perfect sound, but if they don't directly connect to what they're singing, they're not going to be natural. They're not going to be their natural selves. So what I would propose is for you to talk about the intentionality in the words to see if you can get the students to express not just what they're singing about, but how does this song hit you? Does it hit? And if it doesn't hit, how can I help it to hit? How can it help it to appeal to you? Like, so just find out, like, if there's a word in the piece, if it's something like, I don't know, evening, you can say to the students, what does evening imply? When you think of the word evening, let's think of some descriptive words when it comes to that word evening. They might say stars, they might say nighttime, they may say bedtime, they may even say, not my favorite time, you know. It'll start to get them thinking about the intention in words, not the meaning of words. I think a lot of times as educators, we're looking for like the right answer. We're looking for direct meaning. It's like no, implied meaning is subtext. Why we're saying subconsciously why we're saying what we're saying. So yeah, just see if you can get the students to talk about the text, not in a direct way, but more indirect. And then maybe they'll start to feel more connected to what they're singing.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I don't see any other questions, but I see a lot of thank yous. A lot of this was beautiful. This was amazing. Thank you for emphasizing expression and giving me ideas to help my students be more soulful singers.
Yes, that's fantastic. I'm so grateful for that because, as an opera singer, I didn't feel that I could be my whole self when I transitioned to singing classical music. I felt that as a Black woman growing up in the inner city who grew up singing gospel and all that, that I had to be disconnected from her to sing Mozart. And I wish someone had told me that you can be your whole self. You just have to learn stylistically how to sing Mozart so that you are true to the composer. But you can still be yourself as you're singing Mozart. Finding that intersection between natural expression and style. I don't think they're interchangeable. I think some people can be stylistically on point and they're great machines, but then we're not feeling what they're saying. So I figured out later on in life how to integrate the Black church girl with all of her connection and passion to music, and sort of like layer that into who I was as a classical singer. I just had to work really hard to be stylistically correct in singing classical music.
So thank you all very much for coming. Thank you again, Dr. Jackson, and we hope everyone has a great evening.
All right, thank you.